Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. So today we're going to discuss about cell to cell recognition and about the components of the plasma membrane. Okay, now let's talk about the cell to cell connections first. Okay, so most cells in a multicellular organism like you, okay, are in physical contact with other cells at all times, from long-lasting or permanent connections with one another that called cell junctions. Okay, so maksudnya antara sel dengan sel di badan kita ni, okay, ada permanent connections dan dipanggil cell junctions. Okay, and then the cell junctions, they are divided into three categories, all right, based on their functions, and they are the tight junction, anchoring junction, and communicating junctions. Okay. Mari kita tengok one by one. Ini ialah tight junction, okay, antara sel dengan sel, okay, dalam tisu kamu. Okay, and then kita ada anchoring junction. This anchoring junction also known as desmosome, right? So whenever you see the word desmosome, this is what it meant, right? It is anchoring junction that can be found between cells, right? And we have the other one is the communicating junction, okay? And this is the basal lamina, okay? Ingat lagi ya? Recall what you have learned previously, okay? Basal lamina, the base where your cells they are placed on or put on, right? Where they are attached to, right? A base or a layer where the cells are being attached to. Tidak sel kamu ni terapung-apung lah. Okay, now close look on the tight junction. Ini macam mana rupa dia. Okay, and under the microscope, this is how it look like. Okay, and then anchoring junction under the microscope, and then the communicating junction. Ni dia macam lubang-lubang-lubang. Okay, now tight junction yang ini, tengok tight junction. Okay, this tight junction connect plasma membrane, this is the plasma membrane, right, of adjacent cells in a sheet. So dua plasma membrane, okay, daripada dua sel yang bersebelahan, okay, dihubungkan, okay, seperti dalam apa ni, seperti sheet berlapis. Nampak tak? Dua plasma membrane ni jadi hubungkan, okay, dalam bentuk lapisan. Okay, sheet ialah lapisan kan? Mantap. So this sheet of cells will act as a wall within the organ, keeping molecules on one side or the other. Okay. Now at this tight junction, okay, at this tight junction here, okay, at this tight junction here, the plasma membranes of neighboring cells are very tightly pressed. We nampak kan how this plasma membrane, they are tightly pressed, okay, against each other, forming continuous seals around the cells. Okay, so benapalah dua sel ini dia kena ikat di sini. So dia seperti seal lah. Okay. Now these seals around the cell, okay, seperti a barrier that prevents leakage of extracellular fluid across a layer of epithelial cells. Okay. Now, contoh tight junction ni ialah di antara sel kulit kamu, between your skin cell or your epidermis cell. Okay, that make you watertight. Okay. Kalau tidak tight junction ni, apa jadi? Bila kamu mandi saja, air masuk dalam ni. Masuk dalam badan kamu. Entah mana, pergi mana dah. Right, so tight junction ni makes you watertight. Okay? Cuba imagine, ini ialah kamu punya epidermis. So, without tight junction ni, bila kamu mandi, air tu akan masuk ke dalam, pergi dalam basal lamina kamu. Tak tahu pergi mana air tu nanti. Right, so this tight junction, right, form a continuous seal around your cells. Okay. and this makes you watertight. Next, we have this anchoring junction or desmosome. Okay, tengok structure desmosome ni macam mana. So, these desmosomes, right, they are mechanically attached the cytoskeleton of a cell to the cytoskeletons of other cells or to the extracellular matrix. So maksudnya desmosome ini dia attach cytoskeleton one cell, okay, to the cytoskeleton of the other cell. Boleh nampak ini ialah cytoskeleton. And if you recall, there are three components in a cytoskeleton. Dalam cytoskeleton ada 3 komponen kan? Microfilament, apa lagi? Intermediate filament. Satu lagi macrofilament, is it? Or microfilament. Okay, cuba recall balik. Alright, now this desmosome, okay, they are most common in tissues that is subject to mechanical stress. Maksudnya desmosome ni banyak dijumpai di tisu, alright, yang selalu kena tekanan. Okay, contohnya muscle and skin epithelium. Okay, dan desmosome ni dia function seperti rivet that fastening cells together into strong sheets. Okay, so boleh nampak desmosome ni, inilah structure desmosome tu. Okay, desmosome ni ada cadherin. Okay, dia ada cadherin. So cadherin ni dia akan ikat dua sel ni. Okay, dia akan ikat dua sel ni, and then dia menghubungkan satu skeleton yang ini dengan sel yang bersebelahan. So this whole thing, okay, ialah desmosome. Now, desmosomes attach muscle cells to each other in a muscle. So now you know, muscle cell kamu tu dia dihubungkan dengan muscle cell yang satu lagi melalui desmosome. Some muscle tear involve the rupture of desmosome. Okay. So we need to say, those of you who lift weights, okay, I think you've heard of muscle tear. Okay, or simply when you are running. Okay, you are running a marathon. Okay, your muscle cells in your legs banyak akan rupture. Banyak akan ada muscle tear di bahagian kaki kamu. So yang tear itu ialah desmosome ni yang sebenarnya rupture. Okay. Alright, communicating junction, okay, or also known as gap junctions. Okay, provide cytoplasmic channels from one cell to an adjacent cell. Maksudnya, cytoplasm di sini, sel ini, okay, bebas masuk dan bergerak ke cytoplasm sel bersebelahan di sini melalui gap junction ni, ataupun junctions ini, right? So provide cytoplasmic channels, okay, from one cell to an adjacent cell. Okay, very similar in function of the plasmodesmata in plants. Okay, class, always remember plasmodesma singular or plasmodesmata plural only found in cell plants, tidak dalam animal cell. Right, in animal cell kita ada communicating junction. Okay, so these communicating junctions consist of membrane proteins that surround a pore. Right, this is the pore, yang lubang kosong ini. Yang merah ni ialah ni apa ni? Membrane protein. Yang merah ni ialah membrane protein. Yang lubang ni ialah pore. Okay. So gap junctions consist of membrane proteins that surround a pore, which ions, please take note, sugars, amino acids, and other small molecules may pass. Okay, these gap junctions allow communication between cells in many types of tissues, such as heart muscle and in animal embryos. Okay, now recall what you have learned in the plant cell about the plasmodesma. Satu plasmodesma. Okay, kalau ada banyak plasmodesmata. Okay. Now, plasmodesma, okay, or plasmodesmata are channels that pass through the cell walls of adjacent plant cells, connecting the cytoplasm of neighboring cells. Okay, the plasma membranes of adjacent plant cells are continuous with one another through the plasmodesma. Okay, boleh nampak kan? Ini plasmodesma di sini. Okay, then this is the plasma membrane yang kuning ni. Nampak ah? This plasma membrane. Okay, and these plasma membranes of adjacent plant cells are continuous with one another through the plasmodesma or plasmodesmata. Nampak ah? Biarpun ada plasmodesma sini, ada ruang kosong ini, ada channel ini, the membrane cell ni tetap bersambung. Begitu juga membrane cell daripada sel ini dengan sel bersebelahan. Nampak? Ini plasma membrane cell 1 dia bersambung dengan plasma membrane cell 2 melalui plasmodesma ini. Alright. So, generally this plasmodesma allow molecules, RNA and ions, okay, to pass through from cell to cell. But this plasmodesma does not allow organelles to pass through. It's too big for the organelles to squeeze in here. Okay. Boleh ya, kelas? Fahami structure plasmodesma ini. Nampak plasmodesma ini. Dia pun ada plasmodesma ini, tapi plasma membrane cell 1 dengan plasma membrane cell 2 dia connected. Okay. Dan ini ialah cell wall. Okay, cell wall untuk cell 2. Yang ini pula cell wall untuk cell 1. Okay, nampak tak? Cell 1 punya cell wall. Ini ialah cell wall untuk cell 2. Alright. Now, between these two cell wall, alright, ada garisan tengah ni kan? Ini kita panggil sebagai middle lamella. Alright, this is the middle lamella. You can refer this diagram here. Apa? Middle lamella. Right. Now, in plant cell, there is another structure here called desmotubule, right? And this desmotubule is also known as central tubule. Okay, the central tubule connects smooth ER, endoplasmic reticulum, of the two adjacent plant cells. So ini ialah endoplasmic reticulum for the cell 2, and this is the endoplasmic reticulum for the cell 1. And apparently these two endoplasmic reticulum, they are connected, right, between two adjacent cells. And these two endoplasmic reticulums of two adjacent cells are connected via central tubule. Boleh nampak central tubule ni, or desmotubule. Do not confuse desmotubule with desmosome. Okay. Alright, now let's go to the core of today's lesson, which is cell membrane. Okay. Now, Singer and Nicholson, alright, please remember these guys, Singer and Nicholson, alright, they proposed the fluid mosaic model, right? Now, this fluid mosaic model says that the membrane, right, or the cell membrane, the plasma membrane, is a mosaic of protein molecules floats in or on the bobbing fluid bilayer of phospholipids. Maksudnya bilayer phospholipid ini dia bobbing, bergerak-gerak, okay, bergerak macam bot di permukaan, macam bot kapal, right, kapal laut di permukaan air. Apa yang kamu nampak dengan bot tu? Dia macam tu apung-apung kan, bergerak-gerak kan, right? Itulah bobbing, right? So mosaic of protein molecules floats in or on the fluid layer of phospholipids. Okay. A cell membrane. Okay. Now, Singer and Nicholson juga sebut, right, mention. Okay, a cell membrane is a fluid lipid bilayer with a constantly changing mosaic pattern of associated proteins. Okay. Now, this is proven, apa yang mereka propose ni, alright, this is proven from the study of freeze drying of the plasma membrane. Okay, it was shown that the membrane can be separated into two layers. Ini ialah freeze drying. Ini plasma membrane tu. Okay, kan panjang plasma membrane ni. Dia freeze drying. Lepas tu dia potong. Alright, bila dia potong plasma membrane ni dan dia peel off or peel out. Alright, ini dia punya components dia. Okay, so this plasma membrane can be separated into two layers. Dan kamu tahu, theoretically, what you have studied before, your plasma membrane consists of dual layer of phospholipid or phospholipid bilayer. Right, so betul lah. Right, this is the head and this is the tail of the lipid. Head yang bulat hitam ni, kuning ni dia punya kaki, ataupun tail dia. Right, and then this protein, right, can be found, this protein molecule can be found either floating or in this phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so we can say, right, that two main components of the plasma membrane, they are the lipids and proteins. Okay, ataupun kamu boleh sebut yang protein ini, right, they floats in or on the fluid bilayer of phospholipid as the proteins are being embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. Embedded ni ditanam. Okay, ditanam. So you can see this statement here. Alright, this SEM, scan electronic micrograph show membrane proteins, right, the bumps. Bila bumps ni, okay, in the two layers, demonstrating that proteins are embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, ini ialah inside of cytoplasmic layer. Maksudnya, inside of cytoplasmic layer ialah bahagian yang dalam sini ni, cytoplasmic layer. Okay, nampak banyak protein ni punya projection. Nampaklah seperti di sini. Okay, ya, inside of cell extracellular layer pula di sini. Okay, ini extracellular layer sebab this layer is facing the outside of the cell, right, the interstitial fluids. Yang ini cytoplasmic layer sebab ini layer dia facing cytoplasm cell itu, the cell cytoplasm. That's why this layer is known as the cytoplasmic layer, right? Because this layer facing the cells cytoplasm. Okay, all right, now you know already, in a cell membrane you have either these protein molecules, they are embedded, okay, or inside the plasma membrane, right, or it can be on the plasma membrane or under the plasma membrane. All right, okay, now carbohydrates, okay, it can be either monosaccharides, right, or N as well, oligosaccharides. Okay, carbohydrate and other molecules can covalently bond, right, or bonded to the phospholipid or protein unit. Okay, now ini protein molecule tu, okay, kalau dia bond, okay, dengan carbohydrate chain macam yang ini, okay, ini kita panggil sebagai glycoprotein. Okay, so glyco means carbohydrate, protein the protein lah, right? So glyco, the carbohydrate chain, this is the protein. So these two will made up a glycoprotein. Okay, ataupun karbohidrat ni juga, okay, carbohydrate chain ni juga boleh attach or covalently bond dengan lipid ini. Okay, and if this carbohydrate chain bond with this lipid, okay, they will form a glycolipid. Dari sini nampak kan sampai di sini. Okay, this is a glycolipid. Always recall, always remember, this is the extracellular layer of the bilipid, and this is the intracellular of the phospholipids. Okay. Now, the carbohydrates on the extracellular side of the plasma membrane vary among individuals of the same species and even from one cell type to another in a single individual. Okay, maksudnya setiap kita punya glycoprotein ini berbeza. Okay, berbeza. Your glycoprotein is different than mine, right? And between you, even with your siblings, also very different. Okay, right? Because these carbohydrate chains, some of them are short, some are longer, some are slightly branched compared with the other. That's why kita punya glycoprotein, kamu dengan saya berbeza. You and your siblings also different, right? Because of this carbohydrate chain, sangat berbeza. So bila carbohydrate chain ini sudah covalently bonded dengan protein ini, so your glycoprotein and my glycoprotein are very much different. Now, bila sudah berbeza kita punya glycoprotein ini, alright, this will enable the membrane carbohydrates to function as a marker or as markers that distinguish one cell from another. Example, alright, the 4 human blood types designated A, B, AB, and O reflect variation in the carbohydrate part of glycoproteins on the surface of red blood cells. Okay, now class, glycoprotein ini, alright, as what I've mentioned earlier, is very different from one individual to another individual, right? And on the surface of our cell, there are many glycoproteins, many, sangat banyak. Right now, on the surface of our red blood cell, right, red blood cell, okay, let's say your glycoprotein, right, the carbohydrate chain is like a Y shape, right? So anyone who has Y shape carbohydrate chain or glycoprotein on their red blood cell, they are in the A blood group, right? Siapa yang lagi branch, mungkin dia ialah B blood group, begitu, right? Macam saya ni O, right? Saya ni darah O, right? So meaning to say, this permukaan surface of my red blood cell, okay, saya tiada glycoprotein ini, alright? Tiada yang ini, tiada, right? Or kerana the absence of this carbohydrate chain on my protein on my red blood cell, so I am categorized as the O blood group. Okay, kalau yang A dan B itu dia bercampur. Kalau A dia bentuk Y, dia punya carbohydrate chain, dan B pula bentuk lagi branch. So orang yang darah AB ini dia ada dua-dua, both carbohydrate chain bentuk Y dengan yang highly branch di permukaan red blood cell ni. Okay, and this is also, okay, the presence of this glycoprotein also, it distinguish your body cells with the other members of in the same species. Maksudnya, okay, your body cells, right, it has special glycoprotein on the surface of your body cells. It has special glycoprotein that makes you different from your siblings. Okay, and this enables your immune system to recognize your body cells. That's why in organ transplant, for example, all right, when you receive a transplanted organ, right, that organ, all right, will have different glycoprotein or markers on their surface. And what happens if you take this transplanted organ, your immune system will be triggered, and your immune system, okay, especially your white blood cell, will attack that transplanted organ. If that glycoprotein is very different from yours, it must be very much similar than yours, then your body can accept that transplanted organ. Okay, you learn that in detail in SEM 3 later. Okay, so another tag on this surface of plasma membrane. Okay, so you can see this protein, how they are embedded in the plasma membrane, in the phospholipid bilayer. Alright, so protein yang embedded ni are also known as integral protein. Integral means squeeze in between. Right, integral protein. Okay, nampak ah? Protein yang di tepi-tepi ini, right, they are known as peripheral proteins. Peripheral, site. Okay, peripheral maksudnya site, S-I-D-E. So site protein, peripheral proteins. Alright, these peripheral proteins can be usually they are in the apa ini, cytoplasmic sites of the membrane. Right, so boleh nampak glycoprotein, the carbohydrate attached or covalently bond with the protein. Right, and then this glycolipid, when the carbohydrate chain is covalently bond with the lipids. Okay, now integral proteins or integral membrane proteins are embedded in the membrane, and peripheral proteins are associated with the surface of the membrane. So these proteins fitted neatly in the membrane because of their hydrophilic and hydrophobic surfaces bind correspondingly with those of phospholipids. Okay, boleh nampak kan ni phospholipid, tapi peripheral protein ni dia boleh bind sebab of the hydrophilic and hydrophobic surface. Now these proteins regulating transport of substances in and out of the cell. Yang ini ni, integral protein. Okay, it regulates, this integral protein regulates transport of substances into or out of the cell. Now, these integral membrane proteins, they are either globular protein or alpha helix protein, ataupun combination both. Okay, globular and alpha helix. Now, integral membrane protein are inserted into the lipid bilayer with their non-polar segments in contact with the non-polar interior of the bilayer, and polar portions yang sini, okay, protruding out from the membrane surface. So yang polar, ini polar. Okay, sebab yang ini ialah intracellular or interstitial fluid. Alright, interstitial fluid. Dia ada water, and water is polar. That's why kepala protein ni yang polar mesti facing or protruding out from the membrane surface. Okay. And then an integral membrane protein is a type of membrane protein that is permanently attached to the biological membrane. Okay. Now, peripheral membrane proteins are not embedded in the lipid bilayer. Okay. And then they are located on the inner or outer surface of the plasma membrane. So like what I've explained earlier, yang ini peripheral protein boleh jadi di dalam sini ataupun di luar sini. Okay, inner or outer surface of the plasma membrane. Peripheral proteins can be easily removed from the plasma membrane without disrupting the structure of the lipid bilayer. Okay, peripheral proteins are loosely associated with the bilayer, whereas integral proteins are tightly bound. Boleh nampak ah, this integral protein, why they are tightly bound. Tengok dapat structure dia pun boleh nampak dah. This is the alpha helix type of integral protein. Okay, ini globular and alpha helix. Ini alpha helix ni. Cuma dia nampak macam dia berpusing dalam ni. Sebab ni globular. It's a hole. Okay, this is the alpha helix. Alright, so ini ialah integral protein. Okay, integral protein yang bound to an integral protein. Alright, same goes here. This is the peripheral protein that is bound to an integral protein as well. Alright, and this peripheral protein can be found outside the cell plasma membrane, and this one is inside the cell plasma membrane. Alright, next let's go to the phospholipid bilayer. So the heads of the phospholipid are hydrophilic, means it likes water, because this extracellular fluid or interstitial fluid there are composed mainly of water. Right, so yang kepala ni hydrophilic ni mesti facing the water, and this tail they are hydrophobic, phobic of water, so these tails will face far, right, from the extracellular fluid. So the heads of the phospholipid are hydrophilic and pointing outwards into the aqueous medium on both sides of the membrane, right? Extracellular fluid, then you got intracellular fluid, which is the cytosol or cytoplasm. Now, water and polar molecules such as glucose and other sugar will pass only, all right, slowly through the lipid bilayer. So now you know water and polar molecules macam glucose will pass through this lipid bilayer. Alright. Yang water tu lebih sesuai if you say that the water will diffuse. Alright. Diffuse through this lipid bilayer. Now, a charged atom or molecule are less likely to penetrate the hydrophobic interior of the membrane. Okay, so this lipid bilayer is responsible for a cell's selective permeability. Maksudnya, selective cell permeability, plasma membrane ini, alright, or phospholipid bilayer ini hanya membenarkan bahan tertentu saja untuk masuk ataupun melalui plasma membrane ini untuk masuk ke dalam sel cytoplasm. Okay, hanya certain molecules yang boleh pass through. Okay, so charged atom, alright, contohnya temu ion. So cerita charged atom ni yang ion lah. Okay, ion contohnya macam sodium, dia tidak boleh simply pass through ni, tak boleh. So macam mana sodium ion boleh masuk ke dalam cytoplasm? Yes, melalui integral protein. Right, integral protein ni dia kan transport bahan daripada luar masuk ke dalam, ataupun daripada dalam sini sel cytoplasm keluar ke extracellular fluid ini. Itu tugas integral protein. Okay, mana-mana bahan yang tidak boleh melalui phospholipid bilayer ini, integral protein ini akan membantu bahan itu untuk keluar masuk sel itu. Okay, yang ini kamu akan belajar lebih lanjut kejap lagi. Now, the tails of the phospholipid are hydrophobic and facing each other, forming a non-polar interior. Ialah non-polar interior, right, in the middle of the membrane. This non-polar, alright, impedes ni ialah menghalang, alright, prevent the passage of any ion or polar molecules, okay, and water soluble substances that are hydrophilic through the bilayer. Okay, non-polar molecules such as hydrocarbons, carbon dioxide, and oxygen, they are hydrophobic. Thus can dissolve in the lipid bilayer of the membrane and cross it easily without the aid of membrane proteins. Alright, or with the aid or without the aid of integral membrane proteins. Lebih tepat. Right? So, any non-polar molecules ataupun gases, boleh hydrocarbon gases, alright, simply can diffuse, to pass through phospholipid bilayer ini. Sebab itu ialah non-polar molecules, dan hydrophobic tails ni ialah non-polar. So the selective permeability of a membrane depends on the lipid bilayer and the specific transport proteins built into the membranes. Now, point number 7. This plasma membrane, they are dynamic structure. Okay, this plasma membrane is a dynamic structure. Okay, where each layer of phospholipid can move laterally. Okay, this is frequently lah. Okay, each layer of phospholipid can move laterally. Laterally means phospholipid bilayer ni, okay, yang phospholipid ni dia boleh move laterally. Dari sini dia ubah posisi dia pergi sini and so on. Okay, boleh nampak yang hijau ni, one point di sini, and then another point dia ubah pergi sini pula. Okay, move laterally secara sisi. Okay, dan itu paling frequent lah. And then the lipid molecules able to flip-flop. Ini less frequent. Flip-flop maksud dia daripada sini yang biru ni akan turun pergi bawah sini. Dia flip-flop. Terbalik. Tapi itu less frequent. So this causes the protein units to float around within the membrane. Okay. However, some protein units are anchored by microfilament. Yang microfilament ni adalah cytoplasm. Right. So lateral movement of the phospholipids are possible due to the hydrocarbon chains of the phospholipids that are in constant motion. Okay, now point number 8. Okay, unsaturated fatty acids in the phospholipid tails. Alright, apa yang kings ni, because of the unsaturated fatty acids. Recall back what you have learned about the lipids, right? The lipids topic. Now, these unsaturated fatty acids in the phospholipid tails increase the fluidity of the membrane, right? Because of the trans nature that bends the tail. Thus, there are spaces between phospholipid molecules. Boleh nampak kan? Ada spaces between phospholipid molecule ini because of the kinks. Okay. So, kinks in the tails cause unsaturated hydrocarbon tails cannot pack together as closely, okay, compared with saturated hydrocarbon tails. So, making the plasma membrane more fluid. Okay, kalau tidak kinks ini, right? Let's say kamu punya phospholipid tail ini, right? Dia bukannya unsaturated fatty acid, dia ialah saturated. Dia akan jadi macam ni, nampak closely packed. Your closely packed membrane tu kuranglah fluidity dia. Okay. So saturated hydrocarbon tails, when they are packed together, it will increase the membrane viscosity. Tapi sebenarnya tidak. Ini yang sebenarnya. Okay. It prevents packing, enhancing the membrane fluidity. Now, point number 9. The presence, bukan present lah, presence. Bukan T. Boleh juga T, yes. The present and increased amount of cholesterol, okay, it can increases the fluidity of the membrane by controlling mechanical stability, flexibility and permeability of the membrane. So meaning to say, right, in your plasma membrane ada cholesterol, right? So cholesterol molecules are fitted neatly within the phospholipid layer. Okay, you can see how this cholesterol, they are being fitted neatly, okay, within the phospholipid layer. Okay, due to their hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails. Okay, so ini ialah hydrophilic head of the cholesterol, and this is the hydrophobic tail of the cholesterol. So this cholesterol apparently prevents the cross packing, okay, of the phospholipids. Thus lowers the temperature required for the membrane to solidify. Okay, so we can say that this cholesterol acts as a fluidity buffer, okay, for the membrane, where cholesterol resisting changes in the membrane fluidity, okay, that can be caused by changes in temperature. Okay, so at low temperature, all right, this cholesterol, it prevents solidification, okay, by disrupting the regular packing of the phospholipids. So ada sebab lah kenapa kolesterol ni di sini, right? So this cholesterol, where did they come from? From your diet. So penting juga lah, okay, it's important for you to have some cholesterol in your diets. Okay, kalau over cholesterol janganlah, susah lah. So cholesterol has different effects on the membrane fluidity at different temperature. Okay, at relatively high or moderate temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. Okay, the body temperature of humans. What happens? Cholesterol makes the membrane less fluid, all right, by reducing phospholipid movement. A membrane remains fluid as temperature decreases until the phospholipids settle into a closely packed arrangement and the membrane solidifies. So the membrane able to remain fluid to a lower temperature if it is rich in phospholipids with unsaturated hydrocarbon tails. Okay, so maksudnya even at low temperature pun, okay, plasma membrane kamu tu masih lagi fluid. Okay. Now, the last part of today's lesson, the functions of these plasma membrane proteins, okay, especially the integral membrane proteins, generally like what I mentioned earlier for transporting of substances inside and outside of the cell. Now, mari kita tengok lebih detail function dia. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. Okay. So first is as anchoring, right? Now, some of these membrane proteins, all right, example is the integrins, okay, integrins. Anchor, all right, the cell to the extracellular matrix. This is the extracellular matrix, okay. So apparently your cell is being anchored to this extracellular matrix, okay, and this is done by the integrin, okay. So this integrin connect the microfilaments, all right, your cell to the microfilaments of the outside cell, as well as connect your plasma membrane with the microfilaments within the cell itself, right? This integrin protein, right? This integrin function as anchoring. Now, for passive transport, certain integral proteins, alright, they form channels. Dia ada lubang kosong di sini. So, these channels allow selective passage of ions or molecules. Okay, it's passive transport. Alright, some example like water as well as sodium and potassium. Okay, now active transport. This plasma membrane protein also function as active transport. Now, some transport proteins pump solutes across the membrane, and this requires ATP. Okay, apakah this potassium ion dia dipump masuk ke dalam sel ini. Okay, and then yang sodium ion ini pula dipump keluar, and this needs ATP, right? So this protein, this integral protein here, function as an active transport protein. Okay. Now, some of these protein also function in the enzymatic activity. Okay. Now, many of these membrane-bound enzymes catalyze reaction that take place within or along the membrane surface. Okay. Now, all enzymes are protein, but not all proteins are enzymes. Okay. Semua enzim itu ialah protein. Okay. So, yang protein ni juga boleh catalyze activity enzim, alright, di dalam plasma membrane itu. Okay, so many membrane bound enzymes catalyze reactions. Now, signal transduction. Some of this protein, okay, behave as a receptor. Okay, it function as a receptor that bind with signal molecules from the outside of the cell. Example is like hormone, okay, and then transmit information into the cell. Okay, yang ini kamu akan belajar lebih detail next semester, right? Dimana when when you have adrenaline, right? Adrenaline molecule here, it bind with this protein receptor. What happen? It will cause cascade effect inside the cell. Okay, cascade effect where eventually it forms the outcome of the cascade effect is sugar or glucose. Sorry, not sugar, glucose. Right? Because of the adrenaline, you have you have glucose synthesized in your cell, and that glucose is needed for the um, action that is caused by the spike in the insulin, spike of the adrenaline. Apa hal ni? Selalu tersasul. Okay. Alright. The fight or flight. Do you recall what is one of the effect of the adrenaline? Fight or flight response kan? Betul kan? Okay. So for the fight or flight response, your body needs glucose. So glucose tu datang daripada inilah dalam uh, sel kamu ni. Alright. Dalam sel badan. Okay. To be more specific, it is your liver cell. Alright. Okay. Next, cell recognition. Now, in the cell recognition, okay, where your integral protein, peripheral protein, function in cell recognition. Okay. Now, some glycoproteins, okay, function as identification tags. For example, bacterial cells have surface proteins or antigens that human cells recognize as foreign. Okay. Macam mana saya mau terangkan yang ini ya? Okay, now, sebab yang ini kamu akan belajar lebih detail next semester. Now, on the surface of this bacteria cell, okay, alright, ada protein. Bacteria pun ada protein, alright. And this protein, alright, on the surface of the bacteria cell, they are known as antigen. And this bacteria, bila dia masuk dalam badan kita, okay, kita punya immune system, okay, dia akan identify, oh, ada antigen lah dalam badan ini. So immune system kamu akan secrete antibody. Antibody ni akan bind dengan antigen daripada bacteria punya surface cell mereka ni. Alright. So selepas antibody ni sudah bind dengan antigen ni, apa berlaku? Macrophage badan kamu, okay, macrophage daripada immune system kamu akan engulf or phagocytosize bacteria ini. So bye bye lah. Okay. The same goes when you have organ transplants. What happen on the surface of that organ, or the transplanted organ, ada juga glycoprotein, like what I've mentioned earlier. Alright, the glycoprotein, and that glycoprotein is recognized by your immune system as foreign. Alright, so what happens? Your immune system will attack that transplanted organ. Okay, macam mana? By secreting antibody to destroy that organ. Ataupun kamu punya cytotoxic T cell akan directly cause the lysis of the cell of that transplanted organs. Okay. Now, like what I've mentioned earlier, all your body cells have glycoproteins, and that glycoprotein serve as identification tags. All right, and that glycoprotein on your body cells, okay, all right, is recognized by your immune system as self cells. SELF, self cells. So meaning to say, cell tu berbadan kamu sendiri. So there is no point for your immune system to attack that self cells. So your immune system will only attack non-self cells or foreign cells. Okay. Alright, now last function of the plasma membrane protein as intercellular junction. Okay, yang gap junction kamu belajar tadi itu. Alright, so ini pore, dan pore itu dikelilingi oleh protein ini. Ataupun senang cerita, protein itu sendiri lah sebenarnya. Dan protein itu tengah-tengah dia ada pore. Alright. See, cell 1, cell 2. So, cell adhesion proteins attach membranes of adjacent cells. Okay, so summary on the roles of the plasma membrane components. Phospholipid apa dia? Apa dia punya roles? Cholesterol apa roles dia? Protein apa roles dia? Carbohydrate apa roles dia? So, class, you do this on your own. Alright, please. Alright, write down the summary on the roles of the plasma membrane components. Okay, and then you need to label this diagram as well. Betul kan? Okay, so I'm not going to disclose the answers here. Betul. Okay, and then summary on cell to cell connections and cell identity. Okay, so surface mark type of connection, surface markers, tight junctions, desmosome, right, and all this like what we have discussed initially before. All right, this is their structure, function, and example. Okay, now I'm not going to further discuss about this since we have discussed it already, right? I just want to highlight on this MHC complex. Now, MHC complex is the glycoprotein found on the surface of our cell. All right, your macrophage, okay, your dendritic cell and your B cell, they have type 2 MHC. Okay, type 2, well, no, sorry, not type 2, class 2 MHC, class 2 MHC. Your other body cells, other than this B cell, macrophage and dendritic cells, okay, your other body cells, they have class 1 MHC. Okay, and this you will learn in detail in second sem. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, bye.